Hey there, welcome into the latest edition of Chalk Talk from the Denver Pioneers as spring sports season has arrived in 2023 somehow, and pleased to get a chance to talk with you, and along with the head coach of the Pioneers, Bill Tierney, we're talking Denver Pioneers men's lacrosse. My name is Tyler Maun. Coach, it's good to see you. It's much better to see you after Saturday, which was a whole bunch of fun at Peter Barton Lacrosse Stadium.
Yeah, well, it's as you know, after all these years, I usually have a few more gray hairs or a few more lines in my face, but thankfully that didn't come from Saturday's game. It might have come from last week's Monday through Friday practices, but Saturday's game was great. I'm so proud of our guys, mostly just the way they played, so disciplined, and proud of my coaching staff. John Gallant, Matt Brown did an amazing job last week.
I know today Jack Thompson was honored as the Big East Defensive Player of the Week. Fantastic performance in between the pipes for him, 10 saves, only allowed 4 goals. And really, he was sort of the culmination of the defensive effort from your team. But I got to be honest, I was impressed by most everything. And season openers, it's really hard to do that, to put out a very impressive game number 1. Even if you get a win, a lot of times there's so much stuff to nitpick. Coming out of a week of practice where maybe you were a little scared going into game number 1, what do you feel like spurred that on Saturday to have such a disciplined and really well-executed game against Utah?
It's funny, go back a year when Johns Hopkins came in for the scrimmage before our opener last year, and we really played well. Fast forward to 2023, we go to Johns Hopkins and really didn't play very well. It was close. It was 7-6 going into the fourth quarter. And we weren't scoring. We were playing okay on defense, but even there, it was a mixed bag. And so we had something to focus on. I've said it 1,000 times over my career, but I'm not a real believer that losing produces anything positive. But after 49 years of coaching, maybe I realized 2 weeks ago that losing produced a good win for us on Saturday. So, I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. The kids got focused and were just ready to go. And we were all a little nervous.
It's a final score of 12-4 on Saturday for the Pioneers, who go to 1-0. And this week square off with the Air Force, a regional rival, and a short road trip. You don't get 2 straight home games out of the gate, but you get a home game and then a commuter trip. But for this Utah game to be something that was not only performed very well on the defensive end, which is something that we were kind of, I don't want to say expecting, but we know how much the defense is considered to be a strength for your team. I felt like offensively, your guys performed really well. And one of the things that we discussed going into that game is the tendency for young guys, especially, to get hesitant in those first big moments, or to play with a little bit of reluctance to step into the limelight, rip shots, try to score. There did not seem to be a lot of that hesitancy. Now you're led by a couple of veterans. JJ Silstrop and Noah Manning each had 3-point games, but Michael Lampert comes along with a really good performance. Stephen Avery, who hasn't played a ton so far in his career, a couple of goals for him. Andrew Atchison with a couple of goals. Tell me about what you saw from the offensive side that seemed like sort of bred that confidence in the guys, because they didn't come in looking like a young, inexperienced group like we thought maybe was an issue.
Yeah, well, I think what we did see stems from what we didn't see. And what we didn't see is Jack Hanna, Ethan Walker, and you can go back over the years of knowing who was going to get the ball when it was important. And so, what that does is it kind of allows these guys who maybe had a little nervous madness to just move the ball, and if that's what they do without a turnover, that's pretty good. And so, it was some of the goals some of the goal scorers would have been considered a surprise. And certainly it's something that we expect. We get our first goal from Ty Hussey. We get one later from Jack Tortolani. These guys are juniors that have been waiting their turn. And thankfully, again, as a result of the Hopkins scrimmage where, we didn't play very well, it was really good and comforting to see those guys go out there and just do what they have to do. Nobody on our team is going to do any more than that. Certainly feel like the other teams, probably happy that we don't have Jack Hanna but they're going to have to look around and say, well, that guy can score too, and that guy can score too. So we'll see what happens, but proud of the effort, that's for sure.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you. Maybe this is a home radio guy trying to shoehorn a positive into the circumstance, but is there an advantage to the reality of when you don't have the one go-to person as of yet, as of the start of the season? No Jack Hanna, no Ethan Walker, no Connor Cannizzaro, no, some of the guys that we have known for the last several years. When you need a shot, when you need a goal, that's going to be the guy you try to get the ball to. As a coach evaluating teams on the other side, has that ever seemed like even more of a threat of, oh, there's 6 guys out there right now and any of them could take this shot?
No, it's usually an afterthought after you lose to a team like that. It's going in, you kind of say, oh, that guy can't beat us. That guy doesn't shoot real well. That guy's only lefty. That guy's only righty. That guy's been sitting on the bench for 3 years. And so we have nothing to worry about. And then after the game, when you lose to a team like that, you go, ooh, they move the ball well. They're unselfish. They can all kind of score from certain spots, And so, hopefully there'll be a lot of those thoughts as the season goes on.
All right, Coach, let's talk a little bit about Air Force and what's coming up here momentarily. I've promised you that I'm not going to consistently ask you about this being your last season, and I know the people tuned in obviously know that. We're not going to talk about that. What I do want to talk about, though, is the offseason and getting ready for this final season of yours, and not so much in the standpoint of, well, it's your last season, but in the standpoint of, I imagine this felt like a much more normal offseason than the last couple. I know last year was mostly normal. The year before that, you throw everything out the window in 2021. How has this 2023 team sort of come together? We were talking about a couple years ago, the guys who are now juniors, they didn't even meet their senior teammates really until the season started. They all got to be on a sideline together and travel and all that. This 2023 group, tell us about just sort of the personality, the identity, and how they've come together before the start of this year.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I give all the credit in the world again to Matt Brown and really bringing this thing together, which is what we call our the Pioneer culture. Add to that 4 phenomenal captains, Jake Edgar, Alex Stathakis, Adam Hangland, and Jack DiBenedetto have brought that culture back. And it started for the first time on day 1 of freshmen showing up on campus, where we helped move in again and helped, be at my house at the freshman picnic and meeting the parents and having a post-game reception and, just it all kind of being, as you said, normal again, which, when you're coached by me, it might not ever seem normal, but I think it's just one of those situations where I said to Helen the other day, I can't believe that 3 years ago already we shut this thing down on March 12th or whatever it was, and so I think that normalness coming back now has really comforted everybody, our recruits, our freshmen, our sophomores, to say, yeah, this is what Denver lacrosse is, and then hopefully we continue to play pretty well and continue to show that on the field as well.
All right, Coach. Well, let's talk about what is coming up for your guys. You get a chance now to hit the road for the first time. Like I said, not a traditional road trip, I guess, with this one being so short down I-25, but you'll hit Colorado Springs coming up on Saturday and take on the Air Force Falcons. And this is an Air Force team that, they've started the season 0-1, but that's a loss on the road at Ohio State. There's a lot of people who are going to drop games at Ohio State, the number 11 team in the country. Bill Wilson and his team, we know they're going to play disciplined. They were above 500 last year at 8-7. What stands out to you about Air Force going into this matchup this year?
Well, it's funny. What you mentioned the word discipline. Coach Wilson coached with me at Princeton for a year, and I know what he's all about. He knows what we're all about, and those kids. You don't want to generalize about every kid who goes to the Air Force Academy, but I'll tell you what, there's something special about a young man who goes to a military academy. So kind of what you're going to get from a lacrosse standpoint. I thought against Ohio State, they just had a couple of bad breaks. They are big, they're strong, they're well-disciplined. John Thompson, who coaches their offense, is a phenomenal coach. And so this is, this is a team that, as you said, kind of as close to a cross-town rival that we can have. It's the only game, and it only happens every 2 years, where we travel in a bus, and drive down, 25 there and for an hour or whatever it takes. And so you have to make sure that you're on guard. You have to make sure that you take that these rivalries mean something, and it's good that it does. You have your opener, that means something. Now you have your traditional rivalry with Air Force, that means something. And as the year goes on, if you ever get to games that don't mean anything, that's when you got to be really careful. But they're big, they're strong, they got some really good guys who can shoot the ball. They're always physical on defense, and so it's going to be a challenge.
I remember one of the last normal games we did before the shutdown was that road opener at Air Force in 2020, and you get a win there. And it's weird thinking back on those final few weeks before the shutdown, but now knowing that there is a season in front of you in which your guys really have a lot on the table, and especially showcased on Saturday what they are able to do when they're playing well. What do you want to see in the progression from game 1 to game 2, what they did well against Utah to take forward against Air Force, and sort of the next steps for the things that you want to see develop a little bit more from what you saw against Utah?
Develop is the exact word that we talk about. Coaches always says, well, it's the journey that matters, or we got to improve by week, and that's all true, but we made a lot of mistakes against Utah. And as we told the guys yesterday in practice, this is getting better from the mistakes we made against Utah. And you mentioned it on top of the show is, JT bailed us out. He made a couple of ridiculous saves. And so, all of a sudden, instead of being up 8-4, 9-4, 10-4, maybe that's 8-6, 8-7. Now you got the tightness goes. And, we're going to have to probably this week live through some tightness and have to suck it up and have to rely on each other maybe a little more than we did last week.
Well, the Denver Pioneers on the road on Saturday at Air Force to take on the Falcons. That is a 1:00 start time. You can follow along at denverpioneers.com with the live stats and all of that. And he's the head coach of the Pioneers, Bill Tierney. Coach, it was so good to get back out there on Saturday and get a chance to call another win. And we'll see you back here coming up toward the end of the month for Merrimack on the 25th.
Thanks, Tyler.
Wrapping up this edition of Chalk Talk. We'll talk to you next time for the Denver Pioneers.